Okay, so if finance is supposed to be purely math, right, just numbers, spreadsheets, objective data, why do we see even the smartest investors panic and sell during a downturn?
Exactly.
Why do billions of dollars of wealth get created in a calm bull market, only to be completely wiped out by what looks like sudden irrational fear?
That really is the central puzzle we're going to get into today.
Yeah.
I mean, the core idea here is that financial success, it's less about your intellectual intelligence and far, far more about your temperament.
Your behavior.
Your behavior. The real nature of money is this perpetual dance between the cold arithmetic of compound interest and the hot, messy reality of being human. Things like ego and envy and fear.
So we've taken a deep dive into insights from behavioral finance, drawing a lot from Morgan Housel's work. And our mission today is really to give you a shortcut to understanding the strangest part of money.
The human part.
The human part. We're going to explore why your financial DNA is, well, totally unique to you, and how these truly massive outcomes are driven by concepts that are kind of counterintuitive, like time and these things called tail events.
And we'll show you why the pain of volatility, that feeling in your gut, is actually a necessary price you have to pay to get long-term returns. It's not some fine you should try to dodge.
Let's start with that foundation then. Let's start with ourselves.
Let's do it.
Housel has this brilliant but sort of contradictory observation. He says, people do some crazy things with money, but no one is crazy. When I first read that, I just thought, wait, how can both of those things be true?
It's because every single financial decision a person makes, no matter how irrational it looks from the outside to you or me, it makes perfect sense to them in that moment.
Okay.
That decision aligns with their unique mental model of how the world works, and that model is shaped entirely by their parents, their personal life experiences, and crucially, the economic environments they grew up in.
So because there's no single universally correct way to manage money, that means actions that look totally reckless to one person, I don't know, buying a speculative stock, are perfectly justified to the person actually making the purchase.
But does that mean there's no point in teaching universal financial wisdom?
No, it just means we have to adjust our definition of what wisdom is. We have to recognize that the actions we see are forged during a person's formative years. So take your view of the stock market. Someone born in 1970, for instance. They saw the S&P 500, that's the index, tracks 500 biggest U.S. companies. They saw it increase almost tenfold during their teens and 20s.
Wow. So that experience just fundamentally shapes them. They learn deep down that the market always goes up if you just wait long enough. And that creates this deeply positive view, a high inclination to invest.
Exactly. Now, you contrast that with someone born in, say, 1950. During their teens and 20s, the S&P 500 basically went nowhere. It was stagnant. They might have even lost money.
So they learned caution. They learned caution, while the younger generation learned optimism. It's the same thing with inflation. People born in the 1960s experienced really significant inflation, right? The value of their dollars just plummeted. That creates an inherent, almost visceral concern about purchasing power for the rest of their lives.
But someone born in, what, 1990?
Someone born in 1990 has lived through decades of historically low inflation. They just don't feel that same sense of urgency, you know, or that concern about its destructive effects. Their internal alarm bells just, they aren't wired the same way.
So the takeaway for you listening is this. A person's behavior isn't driven by some economic textbook. It's driven by what the market personally taught them when they were young. And if we want to be better with our money, we have to start by understanding our own financial DNA and acknowledging those powerful, often subconscious lessons.
That's the first step.
That focus on time brings us right to our next point, compounding. We all sort of know the textbook definition, earning interest on your original investment plus the interest you've already earned. It's simple math.
Yeah, $1,000 at 8%. Year one, you earn $80. Year two, you earn $86.40. The number seems so small at first.
Right.
And that is exactly why people underestimate it. Compounding is so counterintuitive because the really dramatic results are always front-loaded toward the end.
And no one illustrates this better than Warren Buffett.
Not a soul. We focus incessantly on his brilliant stock-picking skill, but the real secret, the absolute secret, is his longevity. He started serious investing at age 10.
That's the part that's just a mind bender. I mean, get this. $81.5 billion of his $84.5 billion net worth was earned after he was in his mid-60s.
It's unbelievable. He had the skill, yes, but time was the ultimate multiplier. And to really drive that point home, let's just run Housel's thought experiment.
Okay.
Imagine an alternate reality where Buffett followed a typical path. He starts later, say age 30, with a moderate amount, $25,000, and he retires at 60. Even if he keeps his staggering 22% annual returns.
What would his net worth be?
His net worth today would be around $11.9 million.
Less than 12 million, which is, still an incredible amount of wealth for anyone, but it's 99.9% less than his actual fortune.
Exactly. His skill provided the rate of return, but time provided the exponential magnitude.
And we can actually prove that time is the more powerful factor by looking at Jim Simons.
Oh, yeah. The founder of Renaissance Technologies. Simons is arguably the greater investor, just based purely on average returns. He's compounded at an unbelievable 66% annually since 1988.
So wait, 66% a year, yet Simons' net worth is $21 billion, which is 75% less than Buffett's. How can the person with the vastly superior returns be so much less wealthy?
It all comes back to the clock. Simons didn't really find his investing stride until he was 50. That means he had far less time, less than half the years, to compound his returns.
So what would have happened if he had the same amount of time?
If Simons had the same time frame as Buffett, that 66% return would create a fortune estimated at $63.9 quintillion.
Quintillion. That number doesn't even make sense in the real world.
It doesn't. And that conceptual impossibility just underscores the point. Beyond a certain level of success, the size of your returns actually matters less than simply how long you can stay in the game. Longevity is the true engine of wealth.
Okay, so we know time is the key. But how do we survive that terrifying middle part? If the long-term results are so spectacular, why is it that we seem hardwired to prefer pessimism when it comes to money? Why is bad news so much stickier than good news?
Well, because pessimism only requires a single, sudden event to be proven right. Optimism, on the other hand, is the belief that the odds are in your favor over time, despite all the short-term setbacks.
Bad things happen quickly.
Bad things happen quickly, progress happens slowly, and we are just biologically wired to notice the sudden, dangerous loss.
Give us the contrast there.
Okay, so a 40% stock market decline over 6 months is traumatic. It leads the news, it causes government intervention, it dominates every conversation. It's an immediate, easily graspable crisis, right?
Totally. But a 140% gain that takes 6 years to build.
That's incremental progress that generates almost no headlines. Nobody really notices.
I see the progress point. Slow, continuous progress like medical advancements that save 500,000 American lives every year, that rarely makes the front page.
Never.
But a single plane crash will dominate the news cycle for a week. There are so many overnight tragedies, but there are almost no overnight miracles.
And that biological wiring, that directly impacts our ability to compound. When we see the volatility, the fear, that sudden 40% drop, we try to dodge it. We want the view from the top of the mountain, but we don't want to pay the price of the freezing rain and the uncertainty on the climb up.
We're looking for a golden escalator.
We are. We're trying to steal from the market, essentially. Housel has this fantastic car analogy to explain this behavioral mistake.
Oh, right.
You want a car, you have 3 options. 1, buy a new one. That's a high price for a high reward, like aiming for 12% market returns. 2, buy a used one safer, less reward, maybe you get 4%.
Sure.
Or 3, you steal one, you try to get something for nothing.
And most investors, subconsciously, they're trying that third option.
They absolutely are. They want the historical annual return, which has averaged around 10 to 11% for decades. But they try to sell right before every crash and buy right before every boom. They want the reward without paying the price.
So what is the price then?
The price isn't dollars and cents. It's the acceptance of emotion. It's the fear, the doubt, the uncertainty, the inherent risk. You just cannot achieve long-term compounding success without accepting periods where you lose money and you look stupid to your neighbor for a few months.
So if you treat the market's fee as a painful fine, you'll try to avoid it.
And you'll fail. But if you can reframe it, if you can accept it as a necessary admission fee for the long-term benefit, you won't panic when the ride gets bumpy.
That acceptance of risk brings us to 2 siblings we often overlook in finance: luck and its counterpart, risk. We love the simple story that success is just talent and hard work, but it's always a complex combination of that and external factors we just cannot control.
And the story of Bill Gates and the early days of Microsoft captures this perfectly. In 1968, there were about 300 million high school-age people in the world.
Okay.
Only 300 of them went to Lakeside, Gates's small high school in Seattle. And Lakeside, purely by chance, was the only high school in the world that had access to an advanced teletype Model 30 computer.
That's a 1 in a million lucky break. And Gates and Paul Allen leveraged that into a massive multi-decade head start. I mean, Gates openly acknowledges that luck. He said, if there had been no Lakeside, there would have been no Microsoft.
But then you have to look at the tragic twin side of that coin, Ken Evans. He was the third member of their prodigy group, just as talented, just as visionary, and he was killed in a freak mountaineering accident before graduation.
Which was also a 1 in a million risk event.
Exactly. Luck and risk are like the wind and the waves influencing a sailboat. The sailor controls the rudder, sure, but those external factors, they determine the direction and the speed.
So this leads us to this kind of non-intuitive truth about massive financial outcomes, the long tail. This is the idea that a tiny number of events account for the vast majority of the outcomes.
And it completely changes how you have to think about failure. I mean, think about an art dealer. Heinz Bergeron became incredibly rich by buying vast quantities of art, knowing that 99% of it would be worthless.
He wasn't trying to be right on every single purchase.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
He was just waiting for the 1%, the few Picassos, the Klees, the Matisses, to generate his entire fortune.
And that model holds true everywhere, doesn't it? In venture capital, most startups fail.
Utterly. But the small number of outlier companies that return 20 times their investment or more, they make up for all the losses. And even if you look inside a massive diversified company like Amazon,
Their incredible growth and wealth were largely driven by just two key tail events, right?
it's just two. Prime and Amazon Web Services, AWS. Those two products more than made up for every single unsuccessful experiment the company ever launched, like the Fire Phone or their failed travel agencies.
I love that quote from Jeff Bezos after the Fire Phone disaster. He wasn't defensive at all. He said something like, if you think the Fire Phone was a big failure, we're working on much bigger failures right now.
And that is the behavioral shift you have to make. We only ever see the finished products, the profitable stock picks, the stand-up comedian's Netflix special, but we don't see the thousands of failures, the trial and error jokes, the bad investments along the way.
Right.
I mean, get this. Out of nearly 500 stocks Warren Buffett has picked in his career, only about 10 of them made the vast majority of his money.
So being wrong most of the time is actually perfectly acceptable.
It's more than acceptable. It's necessary, as long as you stay in the game long enough to catch those few massive winners.
Okay, so we've established money is about behavior and time, and we've accepted the price of volatility. Now let's redefine the goal itself. We have to differentiate between being rich and being truly wealthy.
This is such a critical point. Richness is easy to see. It's highly visible. It's your current income, the things you own, the visible consumption.
A fancy car, the expensive watch.
Exactly. Wealth, however, is hidden. It is the financial assets you have yet to spend.
That's a huge distinction. The only way to actually accumulate wealth is through self-control and restraint. The money spent on the diamonds and the first-class upgrades. That's consumption. It's not wealth.
By its very nature, true wealth has to be invisible.
So what does this hidden wealth ultimately buy you?
Housel gives the best answer. The highest dividend money pays is happiness, and he defines happiness as the ability to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want. Control over your life. And studies confirm this behavioral insight. Having control over your life and your time is the most dependable predictor of positive well-being. It's more important than your salary or how prestigious your career is.
So if you're pursuing money, but you're sacrificing control over your time, you are, in essence, trying to fill a bucket that has a massive hole in it.
A huge hole. And this brings us right to the danger of the hedonic treadmill, the constant moving of the financial goalpost. It's hedonic adaptation in real time. We chase a feeling, we get the new car, the bigger house, and then within months, it just becomes the new normal.
This is such a critical behavioral warning for you, the listener. If you chase wealth without ever defining when enough is enough, the pursuit just becomes all-consuming.
And we have extreme examples of this. Ultra-wealthy men like Bernie Madoff or Rajat Gupta, they already had everything imaginable, but because they couldn't psychologically define or reach enough, they resorted to crime just to keep climbing that never-ending addictive ladder.
So the ability to just stop, look at the assets you have, and declare them sufficient to maintain control over your time That's the pinnacle of financial behavior.
It's the greatest skill, knowing when to stop moving the goalposts.
Okay, so let's wrap this up.
To briefly summarize the most important behavioral lessons from our deep dive. Money is fundamentally behavioral, not mathematical. Time is the supreme multiplier, turning small, early habits into generational wealth. And that volatility and fear, that's just the necessary price of entry. It's not a fine to be dodged.
And success is driven by accepting risk and failure to find those few powerful, long-tail winners.
That's it.
And let's end on that idea of true wealth and time control. True wealth is hidden because it provides freedom. So the next time you see someone spending lavishly to look rich, the visible assets, the constant display, just remember that they may actually be sacrificing their most valuable asset, control over their time, just to afford that visible image.
A powerful thought.
The highest lesson here isn't about the numbers. It's about defining your own enough and achieving genuine freedom, not just visible display. Thanks for diving deep with us.